All right, chemistry, we're going through the part B, and the directions here are to A, write the balanced chemical equation, B, draw the particle diagram for the reaction, C, write the novel to fully explain the reaction, including quantities of moles. Okay, we're probably going to not necessarily talk about the quantities of moles, but we'll talk about the novel. Okay, I've got the first one written out. We're going to walk through what's happening here. So my first step is to look at my formulas for each of these things. Now, if I go to zinc and I look up zinc on my periodic table, grab that. Okay, I find zinc and I see that zinc is Zn. So I'm going to write this as Zn. Now, it is a solid, so they're telling me the physical state, so I'm going to go ahead and make sure I include my physical state. I then have to figure out my lead 4 nitrate. My lead 4 nitrate. So again, I'm looking on my periodic table to find lead. Okay, lead is Pb. Okay, now remember, Pb can be either a +4 or a +2. The Roman numeral is telling me, though, that this is a +4. So I got Pb. I look up nitrate. This comes from my polyatomic ions. Find my nitrate. That's an NO3 with a -1 charge. So I go NO3. I know it's a -1 charge. If I want these two charges to cancel out, I'm going to need to have 4 of those. So that means put parentheses around and have 4 of those. The physical state of this is aqueous because it's a solution. Now I'm going to go through and do my zinc nitrate. So this is going to be my ZnNO3. Zinc, okay, is one of those ones that on our periodic table is a single charged one. It's always a +2. My nitrate's a -1, so I need 2 of those. And it's also a solution, so it's aqueous. Then we add to this our lead solid. So lead is just Pb, and it's going to be in its solid state. So I've now expressed all of my formulas correctly. I want to just make sure that I go through and balance this. So I need to make sure that I have the same amount of stuff on both sides of the equation. So I track things a little bit. Let's look at our zinc. I have 1 zinc and I have 1 zinc. I have 1 lead and I have 1 lead. I have 4 of the nitrate. So in this one, I'm looking at that nitrate and I'm going to keep it all together. It says that I have 4 of them. Over here, I only have 2 of them. So I need to double my amount. Now this is where I'm going to use my coefficient to show that I have 2 of my zincs. Nitrates, which means that I now double that, so I've got 4. But that doubled my zinc, so I need to make sure I put a 2 over here, so I have a nice 2 for my zinc. And this is my balanced chemical equation. Okay, so I did the first step. Now I got to do my particle diagram, and I'm going to do this with a key. So for each of these particles, I've got zinc, I've got lead, I've got nitrogen, and I've got oxygen. I'm going to have a different color for each. Okay, and let's see, I've got my zinc. I'm going to make that this gray color. I got my lead. I'm going to make the lead the blue color. I got a nitrogen. Let's make that a green. And then I got my oxygen. I'm going to make that red. Okay, so it looks like I have, and then this is where I'm going to separate this out. I'm going to say this is my beginning, and this is my end. Okay, so in the beginning I've got some zinc. Now I have 2 zinc, so I'm going to put a dot here for 1 zinc, and I got a dot here for another zinc. I'm not going to connect them because they're not sharing any electrons. They're not bonded. They're just 2 zincs that are hanging out. Okay, then I have my lead. I've only got 1 lead, so I'm going to just show my 1 lead. But it's connected now to 4 of these NO3s. So I'm going to do There's a nitrogen, a nitrogen, a nitrogen, and a nitrogen. And then I'm going to throw some oxygens on each. So I got 3 oxygen on each, and I got a nitrogen, so this really makes up a NO3. It's an NO3, and NO3, I've got 4 of those NO3s connected. Now, if I look at what's happening on the end, I see now that my zinc, which was by itself, is going to connect itself to an NO3. So my NO3s are this green. Okay. But then I gotta have my oxygens on here. But I actually had 2 of my zincs. And I need to have another set of nitrates. Okay. And then I have to have my lead all by itself. Now if I did this right, I should have the same number of things on each side. So like 2 grays, 1 blue, 4 greens, 1, 2, 3, 4 greens, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Reds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now, again, this is what happened in the beginning. This is what happened at the end. And the reaction is what happened in the middle. And this is kind of like the interesting piece in this. So when we look at what's happening here, the zinc had 2 electrons. So I'm going to grab another color here. This is going to be my electron color. So like my zincs were hanging out here, and they had like 2 electrons. Okay, and so this is just an electron. And those electrons didn't want to stay with the zinc. They wanted to leave. So they needed to find some place to go. Well, the NO3s were taking electrons from the lead. So the lead, okay, essentially had 4 electrons, okay, that each of the NO3s were attached to. And what happens here is essentially the lead decides it wants its electrons back. So it says, I'm going to reclaim all my electrons. They're going to come back to me. So I'm going to pull all my electrons back from you so that I can just become back like a normal lead. And these NO3s are saying, well, we still need an electron, so why don't I grab an electron from here and grab an electron from here, and this one then grabs an electron, and this one grabs an electron. And that in turn makes this a +2 and this a +2, and these are back to our -1s. When they get their electrons back, now all of a sudden we can start to connect each other. So like these 2 guys are going to now connect back to form this one. These 2 guys are going to connect here to form this. And so now we see that this has rearranged itself in our process. So our zinc, which had its electrons connected to it here, lost its 2 electrons to form this new compound. The lead, which was giving electrons to each of these, is reclaiming its electrons, and so then it goes back to being just a lead by itself. Now, that takes care of the particle level, okay, with our key. Now we want to talk about it in a novel form. So we want to talk about what would this story look like if we were to represent this. So it looks to me like we've got some zinc. So we're going to take 2 pieces of zinc. Okay, 2 pieces of zinc are added to a beaker of lead 4 nitrate solution. And that's a pretty good beginning for our story, because we're really introducing the fact that we have some zinc that's being added to our beaker of lead 4 nitrate solution. And when we talk about this in terms of pieces, we might talk about this as in like things. So this would be the equivalent of having, like, say 2 moles. And this is to a mole, like a 1 mole amount of lead nitrate solution. So 2 of those to 1 of those. Now, what happens here in the middle is a reaction occurs. Now, this reaction, we'd have to see some evidence of it. So maybe there was some heat that was generated or some heat that was absorbed, but there was a change in energy that occurred. The change in energy is going to maybe produce that solid particle that comes back out. So we saw this particle kind of go into an ion form, and this one that was an ion form, okay, this one that was a +4 becomes now a non-ion form. But all of this is just going to say a reaction occurs, and it happens really fast. Okay, sometimes it happens really fast. Then we see what happens on the end, which is a solid piece of lead forms in the solution of zinc nitrate. Okay, and you can see that now we have kind of the novel story of it. So again, we started with just our statement of our reaction, what we'd see. We wrote our balanced chemical equation. We looked at it in terms of particles, and now we have it as statements. Okay, and now what your goal is to choose 2 of these from the back and do that same process. I did post a picture of this one as well, so you can kind of track through that one. I'm just not part of the video. If you do have questions, just ask.